Previously on Picking Apart the Self.
What I'm talking about are norms of professionalism. The very norms that organizations use to decide who fits in and who doesn't, to decide who's a good student and who's not, but it especially inhibits people who are from historically marginalized backgrounds because they may have further distance from the prototype of what is considered professional or successful.
This is To the Max, advice from today's experts to tomorrow's leaders. As we've discovered, norms can actively prevent authentic expression for historically marginalized groups. So, how do we make sure that as leaders, we set the right kinds of norms? In part 3 of this series on authenticity in business, academia, and society, Dr. Opie will offer a few tips for how leaders can set an inclusive tone and model vulnerability.
One thing that I've been thinking about more in high school is how can we really elevate the quieter voices and make them which are just as powerful, but often people kind of overlook because they're not as loud, they're not as extroverted, they're not as persistent in how many times they say something, which is really interesting that you mentioned. So thank you.
So this is where structure leads to reinforcement of the system. Typically, the way that people run meetings is it'll be a free-for-all. Or you may say, well, let's just brainstorm. Let's write all the ideas down and then we'll figure them out. Well, unfortunately, what can happen in that situation is the loudest people are listened to the most. One of the things that I do is I don't have it verbally expressed. I make people write things down. I say, okay, everyone, here's an index card. And you can just write, I don't have any ideas. I don't want to participate, but everybody has to write something down, because before, when I would just say, write it down if you have an idea, some people wouldn't write anything, which then had a dulling effect on the brainstorming. So everyone writes something down. I collect all of them, and then we record all the ideas. And I don't put the names of who said what idea. So now we're just focusing on the idea. We're not thinking about who said what, etc. And then I do a gallery. We literally have it like a museum gallery. So the ideas are on the walls and we'll walk around. And if people like the idea, they'll put a tally mark or something. So then you get a democratic process, and then we can go and afterwards say, well, who provided this idea? Who provided that idea? And they know that that's going to be asked of them. So I find that quieter people, more introverted people, feel a little bit more comfortable when they've had some time to think about what they want to share. So that's one solution that I've used that's been very successful in my classes and with my clients, actually.
I was wondering how you see trust, vulnerability, empathy, and risk-taking kind of playing out in a high school setting and how we might approach these conversations when we're young.
It's important for students to see the administrators and the teachers role modeling this behavior. Too much of the time, I think adults like to convey to children that they know everything, that they have it all pulled together, that they don't get angry, I have found it to be very effective when I share challenges that I've had interpersonally. I think it would be very important for administrators to figure out what can we reveal about ourselves in terms of when we've had to confront racism with ourselves, or discrimination or bias or prejudice. What have we learned? What are some of the mistakes that we've had to role model that for the students? And I think vice versa. I think you all have some experiences that honestly, I'm 50. So it's like, there's some things you're having at 17, growing up in this context and in this time, I know nothing about. So I can learn from you as well. So I think that intergenerational role modeling and sharing is critical, but we have to first break down some of the status hierarchy, because it's probably unlikely that students have a lot of conversation with staff and faculty and administrators that we're talking about.
This seems to kind of tie in with what you were saying before about this idea of what are the norms, I guess, in a workplace or a club setting or in a classroom. So by setting a norm where people feel like they have the time to kind of think about these things and have to kind of express themselves in the way that they are most comfortable doing, I think is really cool. Really, it can make a big difference, these small changes that we make.
Yeah, it really, that change has made a significant difference. I would also say this is just not necessarily related to quiet or loud. It's related to the quality of feedback and the culture, is creating a norm where the leader role models accepting constructive criticism. If the norm is that louder, more extroverted people ascend into leadership, then more than likely the leaders are going to reflect a particular prototypical profile. And we need to even show those people being open to constructive criticism. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and discovered something you can apply in your own life. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe. See y'all next time.